everyone, my name is Joseph Tubb. Today is my second video in my new 5-part series where I show you from start to finish the process that I take to create a painting. So what we're going to do is we're going to prep a canvas. The thing about canvas is it's a heavy-duty fabric and it's perfect for painting, but it's a porous material. So what this means is that when we apply the paint pens to it, the paint's going to immediately soak in. And this is bad because it's not going to give us the chance to blend the paint. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to show you the materials that you're going to need. It's pretty simple. It's only 3 things. The first thing you're going to need is a canvas. The second thing you're going to need is a brush. And the third thing you're going to need is some gesso. So let's talk about the canvas real quick. For this video, I'm using a 9x12 canvas. This is a, let's see, they're considering it a medium texture. And for the sake of the video, I'm going to do a 9x12. It's a smaller canvas, but everything that I do in this video can be applied to a much larger canvas. The next thing is a brush. Try to use a good brush. This is actually a painter's brush. It's a 2-inch brush that you can get at like a Sherwin-Williams store. I'm sure art stores have, some really good ones. It's good to use a good brush because you don't want the bristles to come off and get stuck inside that, that first prep coat. And the third thing that we're using is, well, I'm using a Liquitex Surface Prep Gesso. I like the more, I guess this is considered the S because it says S, but this one's more, I like to go with the more fluid. If you read on the back, it shows the different, I guess the different levels here. And I've tried other ones that are thick. This one's great for the pens and just for prepping canvas for me because the thick ones, it's just harder to get a smoother surface, and this is great. It has a matte finish and it's opaque. So if you make any mistakes, you can actually use this to correct your mistakes. So this is a good surface prep right here. So let's go ahead and jump in here. We're going to pull off the peeling. And you're going to immediately see, I think every canvas comes with these things. I've never really used them, but I've always heard that they're used to, like I guess if you're doing some serious painting, your canvas can sometimes get a little, I guess, soggy, and it starts to weigh down. So what you can do with these things is I guess you can plop them in the sides and it'll help tighten up your canvas. But I've also heard that if you spray water on the back that it'll help tighten it back up. So this is our canvas. I'm just going to shake up the gesso just to get it going, just to mix it up. I don't really think it's any 2-part material, but I like to shake paint up anyways. And this is going to be really easy. What we're going to do is we're just going to apply the gesso directly onto the canvas, and we're just going to move it around and try to get it as flat and smooth as possible. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we're just going to pour this on. So there's no real special technique here. It's just really just get the gesso all over the canvas to start. Don't forget about the edges. I tend to forget them most of the time. We want to get the whole thing covered. And what this is doing is it's actually filling in those pores so that it's actually sealing the canvas. So that when we go to use those pens, you're going to notice that it's going to take a little bit longer for those paint pens to dry. And that's a good thing. That's going to give you enough time to get the blends, and you're not going to have to work as fast. So this is great for people who are beginning and they really want to get the blending process down. And what I'm doing here is I'm just lightly brushing the top of the canvas. This is what's so great about this type of gesso, because it's so fluid that it goes on the canvas really nice. And what I can do here is I can feather it in. This helps for it to dry smoother, and it just makes it so much easier. And then I'm going to wait about 10-15 minutes or so for it to dry. So now that the image is transferred, it's time to start painting. The first color combination we're going to use is gray and white. I'm going to use the medium tip pen and start in the lower bottom portion of the shark. I'm going to split the shark in half, essentially creating two sections. The trick here is to be very loose. Just put some color on the canvas to get started. But we need to be a little fast. We don't want the paint dry before we can get to the next color. Now we're going to use the white pen, and this is where the blending technique comes in. I'm using a back and forth motion, leading the white into the gray and pulling the gray out. We're going to do this all the way down, and then we're going to repeat this method again. Here I'm doing the same method as before, applying the gray first and then following with the white. Using a back and forth motion, I'm pulling the gray out and I'm continuing the pattern. By using this technique, you'll start to notice that when you bring the white back over it again, you'll see that the white will gradually fade back to its original color. Once we have this section finished, we can move on to the next color combination. Now that the painting portion is complete, we will start tightening up the image using the black pens. Don't be discouraged if your image looks messy, because the black will help the painting come together. What you should do here is take your time and try to maintain a steady hand. Be patient in this section because you don't want to rush and make a mistake. We're going to do this outline around the entire image, and then we're going to come back and do a profile line. Now that we've gone through the basic outline, we're going to give the painting some character. We're using a medium tip pen, and we're essentially going to profile the image. What this does is allow the image to really pop. It's a technique that cartoonists use to make their characters really stand out. Plus, this gives our image some line variety, which makes it more interesting and not so dull. If we left the image with a basic outline, the image would appear flat and boring. But by doing this, it will help the image to give it some life and dimension. As you can see on these longer sections, I'm actually locking my wrist, and I'm using a pulling motion by pulling with my arm. So now we're almost done. This step can be optional. I like to do highlights because it gives the painting some more character and uniqueness. There's no right or wrong way of doing this, but just keep in mind that sometimes less is more. Our painting is almost complete. We just have one more step left to do, and that's just adding in the gills. Using the gray, we're going to create a S shape that gradually gets smaller. What I'm doing here is just coming back and accenting certain areas with a black pen, just to give it a little bit more texture. So that's it. Just sign your name, and we're done for this part. Hey guys, welcome back. This is the final video in our series, and what I did in the beginning was I just added some bubbles into the composition, and what we're doing today is we're going to paint the background. And there's multiple ways that you could do it, but I thought it'd be neat to show off a couple new things. One thing that we're going to be using is this art masking fluid, and I'll show you and I'll explain what this is. And another thing we're going to be using is some varnishes, and that's actually the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put a coat of varnish on. This is the type of varnish that I use. It's a spray varnish. It's really easy. This is actually what I would recommend. Find any kind of acrylic to spray on. I've had the best results with this. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so after you sprayed it, this is kind of what it's going to look like. It has a little bit of a gloss on it. Just keep in mind that before you spray, clean the canvas off. Make sure there's no dust, no dirt. You just don't want to have that kind of stuff show up after you finish the whole thing because it's really difficult to get it out. Now we're just going to wait for this to dry, and then I'll explain why we did this. Okay, so we waited about 30 minutes, and we let the varnish set up so it's dry. So now we're going to move on to the next part. And what this is we're going to use this art masking fluid. And what this is like, it's almost like tape, but it's in a liquid form, so you're able to mask off what you want to save. and they typically use this for watercolors, but it works for this application as well, and it's really fun. And I thought this would just be a really cool, cool thing to show you guys that you can play with. So what you're gonna need like something to put it in. Also, you're gonna need like a cheap brush. I bought like a pack of paint brushes for like $3 at an art store, so I really don't care about these because this is kind of like a glue. Once it dries, it's kind of funny. It's like kind of rubbery. So you want to shake it up, and you probably don't pour out too much because you don't want it to dry on you. So we're just gonna go ahead and scoop it out. Make sure you put the lid on it, just so that, again, you don't want it all to dry out. So this is what it is. It's like a kind of like a creamy yellow. So it's just really easy. So you just start applying it like if it was paint, and it starts to go on clear, but it will dry, to let you know. And we're just gonna go all around everything. And you don't have to be perfect. The main thing you want to do here is cover the color. You don't have to get it exactly up to that black line, because chances are we're probably going to re-outline this painting. And the reason why we put the varnish on was so that this, when we go to peel this off, it's not going to peel the paint, because this stuff will stick. And it can stick and pull the paint off. So that's the reason why. You want to put the varnish on. You want to have a protective layer between this masking fluid and the paint. This is pretty good. We've covered everything, and the trick here now is to let it set up for probably about 20 minutes or so. Okay, so we waited about 20 minutes or so. And now we can tell that it's kind of dry. Another trick you can do is you can try to put the stuff on a scrap sheet of paper. You can see I put some here, and you can just feel that. And if it feels like it's dry, like it is now, and it's peeling off, see, that's what's so cool about this stuff. It just comes off. It's almost like a booger. Look at that. So we're good. I hope, I really hope you guys saw that. I wasn't looking at the camera, but in all else, it's dry. This is what we're left with, like this little booger. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use this stuff. It's called acrylic. It's an airbrush paint. It's water based, and I have some already here in a little petri dish, and we're just going to use this stuff to paint the background. So just go ahead and, we don't need a whole lot. Just kind of squirt some in so you guys can see all that. So these are the colors that we're using. We're using black, blue, light blue, and white. And so the idea here that we're going to do is we're just going to go from, let me zoom out just a little bit so we can see everything. We're just going to go from a black base to essentially a white base. And I'm using a 1/2" chisel brush. But I'm using like a nicer brush here, so this is a nicer grade. And there's really no particular fashion to do this, and don't worry about getting paint here because it's going to come right off. So I'm just going to go ahead and start, with the black, and let's see, I'm not sure I want to get the whole canvas here. There we go. And start out just a little bit, not a whole lot, and just kind of throw the paint on. And like I said, don't worry about getting it on your image because it's going to come right off. And what the coolest advantage of this is, like, you can have a really consistent background. So it totally looks like I'm trashing this painting, but do not worry. So then this is cool because, like, you can start to blend your colors in and have this really cool, dark base. So I'm just using kind of like a stippling effect. I'm not like doing a traditional, brush stroke. I'm changing, the angle of the tip or the brush end and what that does is it gives me just like a different texture to this. I'm not going for any particular effect. And what's cool about this Airbrush paint is it kind of acts and works similar to the paint pens because it is a water-based product. So, and it also will go good once we start to put the final coat, the finished varnish on. So we're not mixing chemicals, we're not mixing products. I mean, technically we're mixing products, but the base component is the same. Alright, so now I'm going to clean my brush off. And the reason why I want to clean the brush off is because I want the next color, blue, to do the blending on the canvas, not so much within the paint. And you can see this is a really easy process. I mean, having to not having to worry about, oh, I don't want to get paint on the main focus, of the painting. It can be stressful, but this kind of makes it easier. You can also do this whole process in complete reverse, which is kind of cool. These Pasco pens, they're pretty opaque enough to where you can draw right on top of this background. Let's see, I'm going to add some more dark blue in here. Once you feel like it looks, like you feel like you have enough blue in there, clean your brush off again. Grab the white, add a fourth color, and just clean your brush off with the white periodically. You want to make sure that your white is, clean. We don't want to, accidentally touch the black and then have, black splotches. I'm using, just a paper towel, cleaning it off, and then dipping it again. And again, just use a dabbing, kind of like a stippling effect. You don't want to do a brush stroke because it'll give you a totally different look. So this is, this has more of a, it just has more of a textured look. It just has something, adds a little bit more character to this. And don't worry if it's not completely even throughout the painting, because again, that texture just looks cool. So if you have areas that are raised, that's fine. It's pretty much done. And just so you guys know, we didn't have to use a lot of paint. To be honest, I'm kind of bummed out because there's a lot of wasted paint. So, less is more in my case. So just keep that as a, in the back of your head when you're getting ready to do this. And now, so what I'm going to do is just clean up the edges. I'm going to probably cover the canvas. Alright, you guys, we're back, and everything is dried. So now comes the tricky but yet fun part of this process, and that's removing the glue. So the best method I have here for doing this is just use your finger and kind of do like a rubbing back and forth type motion, and it'll start to roll up on itself. Let's see, can you see that? Yeah. So it'll start to roll up on itself, and you just keep working it and be really slow and careful. Here you go, you can see it here now. And take your time, because you don't want it to flake off other paint. And you also don't want it to, just in the worst case scenario, pull the varnish off. So as long as you're slow, you should be okay. This is what's so cool about this stuff. And if you put enough on there, like I said before, you'll be able to pull it all off in one shot. And I know we have a lot of white around the edges, but like I said, we'll probably just go back and reprofile the image. And it's very important, you have to get all of this stuff off, because you do not want this to be in the final varnish coat, because it could probably bubble, or it could cause the paint to start to flake. I mean, look at this. This is so cool. Just how this stuff works. Alright, so that's pretty much removing it from the whole shark. So we're going to do the same thing with these bubbles. Just kind of move your fingers back and forth until it starts to break away. And then it should all just come up real easy. Okay, so we've removed all the masking, and as you can see, we still have some white spots all around. And that's totally fine. If you want, what you can do is you can go back with our leftover paint and we can touch up these areas, or you could just go back in and profile everything out and fill it all in with black. So, so that's what I'm going to do right now. Alright guys, well this is pretty much it to the series. So really the last thing that's left to do is to just sign your name on here and put one more coat of varnish on it and hang it on the wall. So just so we can take a quick look, we did the sides, so everything looks really nice. So this really doesn't really need a frame. And overall, it looks pretty cool. So we're just going to go ahead and sign the name, and that will conclude this series. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there we are, you guys.